It encourages us to think of the ways that those pieces of the world that haunt us, that challenge us, that make us question, are the very pieces that can inspire us to light, that can inspire us to answer the call. And so it is in this spirit that we enter our time of worship today. It is in this spirit that we enter our sermon piece into Mark 1:21-24. We are located in Capernaum. And in Capernaum, a lot of the work and ministry of Jesus is going to take place. This is a centralized location for the ministry and the story that we are telling together. And it is in this moment where Jesus is teaching. And he has come into this space, and it's early enough where people kind of know who he is. People are kind of becoming aware of who Jesus is. But there's still this man that has walked into this space, and crowds are beginning to gather, and people are beginning to ask, what's going on with this guy? He steps away from the pulpit, if you will, and moves out among the people, and he begins to talk to a single person, and he says, be quiet, come out of him, to the sickness of that person. And you can imagine, I can imagine, I'm inviting you to imagine being present in this moment where you're sitting in this pew hearing the word of Jesus, and all of a sudden the attention is turned on somebody else. And in that moment it is holy. And in that moment the attention shifts, the understanding shifts, the answer shifts as to what Jesus is being called to do. And I think about this moment, and I think about it in the context of our question of how are we going to answer the call. But before I get to what I think, I want to know what you think. Because when you read this scripture, I have to be honest, the implication of call is not the most present here. There are a lot of other scriptures. I said 1 million in Kelseyville. There probably are not 1 million other scriptures, but there are a lot of other scriptures that could have been better used to talk about a call, to talk about answering a call. So my question for you for today, and you're more than welcome to answer if you have some ideas, is what is this scripture? What does this message have to do with answering a call? Does anybody have any ideas? I'm also just curious.
A sermon I was giving and yelled something, and it's very distracting, and it causes a little bit of fear about how are you going to handle that. There's a little fear there. Jesus had no fear. He was called to do what he was doing. He knew it. In my humanness, I had fear. My sense is there was no fear there. The call was complete and strong.
Yes, thank you. Horace, did you have?
When we leave this place and until we return, we're continually getting messages or getting calls. And it's how we use the lessons that we learn here and our experiences through reading that we become aware of the calls that we received, whether it's in the corner store or whether it's at our job or whether it's at a traffic light, or we're constantly being called.
Yes.
Also there was some confusion on my part in terms of how to handle somebody who's standing up and yelling during the service. When this happened to me, my husband was here and ushered them out. You want to be gentle and kind, but you also want to be firm. So it's, Jesus knew. He just knew how to do it.
I don't know. I think that a call has to do with the moment, and it comes from the heart. So you're in the presence. You're there with that person in the heart. Whereas purpose was, and you were challenged, you know, the person intended to challenge because he had a message.
Yeah, and I think that, Claudia, I'm actually grateful that you brought up that example, so thank you. Because this was also the space that we talked about in Kelseyville, that element of fear. That element of fear that was present, and I appreciate what you said about, you know, Jesus was so firm and solid in his calling. He was so firm and solid in the message, in his authority, because that's the other little piece of this, is that Jesus claimed some authority here. And those who were in power did not necessarily love that Jesus claimed some authority here. And so when we think about this scripture, when I think about this scripture and its context with calling, I hear that piece of, if there was fear, it wasn't shown. And how many times and in how many spaces do we enter into the world just going about our day, having a normal, regular Tuesday, and something happens where we are asked to respond, and it is different than we thought our day would be, and it is more complex than we thought our day would be. And we have that moment of fear, and yeah, I ask us to remember this scripture in those moments, to remember the scripture in those times when we are inching toward that, letting fear take over, letting fear answer the call, and we can be reminded that we may not have the complete call that Jesus had. That is true. But what we do have is an example to be able to live out our lives in a way that is authentic and true to what we are feeling. And when I think of the scripture, I think of a couple of different things. I think about how rising up to answer a call, to answer a request, to answer the phone sometimes is a challenge. Answering is a challenge. Answering requires energy. I don't know about you all, but sometimes I have a really hard time answering the phone. There are times in my life where I look at the phone and it's like somebody I love, somebody I care about. It's not a stranger, it's a number I know. And I still have that moment of, do I have the energy to do this today? I see people nodding their heads. I feel like I'm probably not the only one who has had this experience. Answering any kind of call, telephone or otherwise, requires energy. It also requires us to be able to listen. Last week we talked about listening, and it's kind of a two-parter, because you can listen without agreeing to take action. You can listen without saying, here I am, Lord. I'm ready to take this. I'm ready to do this. I'm giving this response. And so listening and action are two separate things, and they're two important things. And it gets to what I would call a yes and kind of faith. Do any of you have any familiarity with improv? Anyone? A couple? I see a couple people nodding their heads. Okay. So I'm just you're gonna be my example. You don't have to do anything, I promise. So if Grace and I were doing improv, and we were acting out a scene, and Grace said to me, Mel, I got you a cake. A response that I could give would be, that's not a cake, it's an old shoe. See what that does? First of all, it normally would get people to laugh, but that's okay, I must not have done it. That's fine. So it normally would get people to laugh, but it would be a quick laugh, and it would kill the scene. Because Grace is like, I had a clear intention of the path that I wanted to go, I knew what I wanted to do, and you not giving me the yes and has completely derailed our scene that is happening right now. But if Grace were to come to me and say, I made you a cake in this improv scene, and I were to say, oh, thank you so much, I love my sweet 16, then you would know two things from this. You would know that it was in fact my birthday, so I was giving Grace the affirmation that I was on board with the scene, and also I've added to it. so you know that it's my 16th birthday. And that is something that Grace and I can work off in the rest of our time, in the rest of our scene. And I encourage us to live out our faith in the same way, with yes and. Because it is about the moment that we answer that call. It is about those simple moments in time where we say, you know what, this is it. This is what I'm here for. This is what I want to be doing. It is in those moments when we hear the story of those who have come before us, like Moses, and we hear his hesitation, and I don't think I'm the right person for this. I don't have a good speaking voice. And we hear God say, no, you're exactly the person who I want for this. And it is in those moments where those around us, our community, lift us up and bring us together, those moments where Moses had his brother Aaron, who was a good speaker. Claudia, you gave the most perfect example for where I was going 5 minutes later, so thank you. Because in that moment, you had someone who was able to help shift the conversation. You were surrounded in beloved community. And that is where the call is found. That is where the call is lifted up, where we are able to say, yes. Yes, I am here to serve with justice. I am here for justice. When we can say, yes, I am here to love compassionately and tenderly. When we can say, yes, I am here to walk humbly with God. It is in those moments where we are able to have a yes and faith. And it is in the spirit of a yes and faith that I invite us to stand together and sing, We Are Called.
Come, open your heart, show your mercy to all those in fear. We are called, we hope for the hopeless, so hatred and blindness will be no more. We are called to act with justice. We are called to love tenderly. We are called to serve one another, to walk humbly with God. Sing, sing a new song. Sing of that great day when all will be one. God will reign. We'll walk with each other as sisters and brothers, united in love. We are called to act with justice. We are called to love tenderly. We are called to serve